Thank you, Cammy. Gary Smith and I were having a discussion earlier about whether I'm still a representative or a former representative, and Gary took the position that until Monday, when my successor is sworn in, I'm still the representative. But regardless of whether I'm... Thank you, Cammy. Gary Smith and I were having a discussion earlier about whether I'm still a representative or a former representative, and Gary took the position that until Monday, when my successor is sworn in, I'm still the representative. But regardless of whether I'm a current or a former, I'm not going to be there next session, and so we need to hear from somebody who will be and who will be a leader in the 88th General Assembly. South Arkansas has always been dependent on natural resources, and of course the job of MEDC is to promote economic development in our area, to promote jobs, and we've got to have jobs to keep our population. I was looking at some of the census data earlier this week, and the 4th Congressional District is going to have to pick up over 70,000 people to balance it out. The 3rd District, Northwest Arkansas, will need to lose over 100,000 people. So we need jobs, we need economic development, and we've got our timber, we've got our oil and gas, we've got our brine, our bromine, but we know that we have tremendous reserves of lignite. And we want to study and to explore that. In the 2007 session, I introduced a bill to establish the lignite pilot program here at Southern Arkansas University, working with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and the Arkansas Geological Survey. We got that bill passed. We got a small amount of funding, but we need more funding, and we need someone to keep that on the front burner. And that someone is Representative Garry Smith. Gary is from Camden. He'll be one of the senior members of the legislature this year. We had a number of South Arkansas legislators that turned out, and so Gary's going to take the lead. He's conducted a number of meetings across South Arkansas about lignite already, and we're pleased to have him here this morning. So at this time, would you join me in welcoming Representative Garry Smith?
Appreciate the leadership that Bruce portrayed throughout my first term as a member, as a leader, chairman of the Budget Committee. He was Mr. Finance, and we leaned on him heavily. So we're going to miss him, but he's not going to be out of the program. He just won't be in Little Rock for a while. But we're looking forward to pushing this lignite issue, as he has mentioned to it already. We've had several meetings. Had one last night in Arkadelphia. We're getting a lot of attention from the media as well, and the Channel 11 News carried part of that last night, and also at the printed page we've seen a lot of notice around from even neighboring states. So the issue that we're needing to approach is, of course, is job creation. We do a real good job, in my opinion, and according to statistics, of educating Arkansans, but we don't have the jobs for them to have when they get their education. So therefore they move to Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Nebraska, or wherever they can find for a place of employment. And that's draining our numbers, and numbers is about power, and power is about economic development. And so, as Senator Pryor's office is represented here this morning with Deacon, and he's a friend of ours, we talked a little bit this morning about maybe seeing if we can get some federal funding for this project. You're asking, well, what do we need the money for? We need $3 million to do additional core samples for the value of the existing lignite. Now, we did that back in the 70s, early 80s. They came through and leased up the property, or the mineral rights rather, for a period of 5 years. In our personal place out there at Farming Grove where I live, they came through and gave us a 5-year lease. Exxon was the leaseholder. And we asked, well, what are y'all looking for? And they said, well, there's two things. It's either it could be gas, it could be lignite. We're waiting to see. We want your approval. So we agreed, and nothing happened. Well, in 1973, when the oil embargo occurred, I remember waiting in line to get gasoline to travel. I just graduated from Magnolia down here from Southern State College at that time with a business degree in 1972, and I had to wait in line to get gas. The price jumped from 35 cents a gallon to $1.19 overnight, and it was just a horrendous thing to do, but we had to have it. You see, in Arkansas, as you all know, we're very rural. We have no mass transportation. You've got to drive 30 miles to get anywhere. Is that right, Mike? And as we go, we have to have fuel, and of course we have to pay whatever the going rate is. Well, if you watch the news, and I know you have, the trading for oil yesterday was in the $90 per barrel range. At $1973, when the Arabs said we're not shipping any more oil to America, we began to panic. We looked for ways to have alternate energies. And then politically things got back in line. We had made up with the sheik and everything got back to normal, and the price of oil went down to $5 a barrel. It wasn't economically feasible to develop a new product at that time, so we kind of went to sleep on the job. And that's a shame because we've allowed 30 years or plus to go away where we could have been developing alternate energies. Now we're looking at a global environment, global warming that we believe that's having some impact on our weather. Whether that's true or not, we're looking at it. And so alternate energy sources are things we're looking for. We have an alternate energy source right here under our feet in South Arkansas. We know of 4 billion tons that are recoverable and can be mined, economically feasible, and produce products that will be useful in our economy. Now there's probably more than 4 billion. We figure it's probably close to 9 billion tons. If we take that fuel and operate a gasification plant like they have in North Dakota, we could operate for 548 years producing gas to heat 500,000 homes per year with just the gasification. Now during all this time, the clock has been ticking, but there have been folks that have been looking at ways to create something from what we have. And that's what economic development is all about, as Cammie mentioned. And thank you, Cammie, for inviting me this morning. And I want to say accolades to Dr. Rankin and the staff here and the lignite research team for helping get the news alerts out for us to have these meetings occurring. Jeremy Langley and Debbie Beasley and of course Robbie Taylor. These folks have been very, very helpful in allowing us to get this done. We wanted to have our meetings before the 88th General Assembly convenes, and that's Monday at 1 o'clock when they're sworn in. So these meetings have occurred during the holidays, and some folks didn't catch the media, and so they asked when's the meeting, and we missed it, and we didn't get to come. But we started having these meetings at Hope, and then we went around the area over to Hampton, and we've been to Arkadelphia. We've been down here, and we talked about this. We're going to go to Benton tonight and back to Camden tomorrow night, and to let people know that we have a very large deposit, something that God put here for us to use anyway, that's below the surface. In some areas, it's just barely below the surface of the topsoil. In others, it's deeper. We need the money to make new drill cores to determine the value of the mineral and to have that analyzed at the Energy Research Commission that the federal government established back in the 70s and to give us the value of that mineral. Well, some of the againers will ask me, well, Representative, why are you not getting the industry to do something? Well, let's look at what's going on right now. Over at Fulton, we've got an argument about whether or not we need a coal-fired electrical generating plant. And we have people that are environmentalists that think we're going to contaminate the environment by having that coal-fired plant. And so litigation has cost a lot of money in the development, and if I'm not mistaken, right now I think we're back on go. Is that right, Bruce? We're moving ahead with it, or that's the latest that I got. But there's attorneys that are sitting back, and every time there's an appeal filed, it costs more money. So to the outside world, those that don't live here in Arkansas, they think, well, you guys really don't want to develop an alternate energy, so why should we invest in it? And so it's kind of like, you know, if you're going to go into business, you have to put up some money. Again, I'm picking on Bruce, but Bruce is a banker too, and he wears several hats. But if I were going to go borrow money from Bruce, he'd say, well, how much collateral do you have? Well, you know, I got $100 in my pocket. Yeah, but you want to borrow $10,000? That's not enough. Well, we in Arkansas, if we're going to develop our resource, we've got to come to the table with something from ourselves. And that $3 million is a drop in the bucket. Have you all got a copy of the white papers that SAU Magnolia has generated? I don't have that in front of me, but if you'll thumb through that, you'll see that what I'm talking about, I'm not whistling Dixie. $640 billion with a B as far as the value of the known deposits when oil is trading at $80 a barrel. Now, at $90 a barrel, it's worth more than that. But at $80 a barrel, we know that we can mine it and we can put it into a liquid form for $40 a barrel. Actually, a little less than that. But let's just be careful with our math. And so $40 versus $80, pretty good return on your investment. And if we set up 2 plants in South Arkansas, and one of my friends from Calhoun County was at our meeting in Hampton, he said, hey, I came to see me yesterday. He said, I don't like the way you proposed that. I said, what's wrong with you? He said, well, you didn't show a plant in Calhoun County. I said, well, this is hypothetical. We said one in Dallas County, one in Clark County. We just picked those. He said, yeah, but, you know, if you're not talking about Calhoun County now, I know how politics work. I said, just bear with us. We'll get the plants wherever the largest deposits are. And, of course, Calhoun County has an extremely large deposit. And we have to think about where can we send this liquid after we refine it at the site. Well, Line Oil down in El Dorado is close in proximity to all of these locations. And trucking would be beneficial. We wouldn't have to build pipelines. We would have many refineries. In your paper there, you'll see about a refinery that's 20 by 20 by 20. You can haul it on an 18-wheeler, set it up in my field, and dig up my mineral right there. We need to excavate it and mine it at the source, because as it's removed from the surface of the earth, it oxidizes rather quickly, and it has a high moisture content. So back in the 70s, when we were talking about making electrical generation, the BTU output of lignite was not as great as number 2 coal or other sources of energy. We had to add other things to get that flammability. But at UT Arlington, the engineers have been working on a method to refine that into a coal to liquid. And so we need water. And according to my chemistry, that's H2O. And we add extra hydrogen, and we need additional water, and we make that, and we crack it into a liquid at the point of refinement right there on the site in about a 5-minute or less than 5-minute period of time at 500 psi and about a 300 degrees centigrade. I'm not a chemist, but those are facts that have made a great impression and a great improvement over what Adolf Hitler did during the Second War. You see, he ran his war machine on coal oil, and it was derived from lignite. Because he couldn't get to the North Sea oil deposits, they tried to do that, and you know the story. And so coal oil kept his machine going. His Fischer-Tropsch technique has been refined by Exxon and also UT Arlington, and instead of running 3,000 psi, we can do it at 500 psi in less than a 5-minute period of time and make it into a liquid. That can be trucked down the highway. We don't have to build infrastructure. We can use existing roadways and things like that. So you see, it's a vast improvement over what we have today. And my ability with economics, and I've been blessed to help out down here and also at SAU Tech as an adjunct and talking to young people about what economics is about. You see, every time a payroll dollar is turned in a local economy, it turns 7 times. If you've got a plant operating at $14 million per year, the annual salary, crank it through with 7 and see what you get out of that. And at $18 million per site of local supplies that would be purchased for those. And so like Channel 11 mentioned last night, if we were to construct 12 of those factories or 12 of those sites, mining sites in South Arkansas, can you imagine the economic boom it'll do for that? And then the operation of that machinery. The machinery, if you've been to Hallsville, Texas, you'll see these giant earth-moving machines. Now, we talk about strip mining, you say, well, man, I don't like that idea. That sounds terrible. Mosquitoes, you know, we have a lot of those anyway. Why do you want to have a mosquito pit? Well, all during this period of time, the federal government has opened up a federal mining act that says if you move that mineral, you've got to backfill it or you've got to reclaim it as you remove it, as you mine it. So they're digging out on one end of the pit and covering it back up on the other. They take the topsoil off and dig out the mineral and replace it. Put the topsoil back and plant it back in grass and timber or whatever. You've seen the slides that we showed here a few weeks ago, the beautiful pastures and 3-year reclamation. I'd like to get my cows out there eating on that clover, and if I had grass, it'd be a great improvement for my existing pasture because the hard pan's broken up and it allows that to grow faster. Timber would also grow faster and closer, more trees per acre because you can plant in closer location. The hard pan, if you would, has been broken up. So we see that, well, who are you going to come in and take their property? Well, I've asked the Legal Bureau, I asked them this week, I said, define for me what mineral is defined in the Arkansas statute. I said, does it refer to oil and gas, water, sand, gravel, and or lignite and coal? My reply was, all those are considered to be minerals. I asked, how deep does the mineral right go? They said, well, we've already looked into that. Your air rights go from earth to heaven, and your mineral rights go from earth halfway to China. So we can get all the lignite that we want to get as far as that's concerned if you own the mineral right. Well, what about if I have my property and I don't have the mineral rights? And that's a question a lot of folks are asking, and they want to know what happens. And I asked that same question. There's been 2 cases and proven in court that if the surface owner does not own the mineral, for the company to mine the mineral, they have to pay damages. Well, okay, what are the damages? If they come in and destroy your barn or your house, then you can be repaid for the damages. I guess you get a new house out of the deal. I don't know. Of course, in my case, we've got $500,000. So I'll get half of it if that's ever the decision. I'm not doing this because what it will do for Garry Smith. I'm not doing it for what it'll do for my kids or my grandkids. I'm involved in this effort because what it will do for all of our Kansans. It'll generate severance tax dollars. It'll generate jobs. That's what my campaign has been about. From my years on the Quorum Court in Ouachita County, and now I'm getting ready to start my 2nd term in the House, I've always talked about job creation. Because you see, I was blessed to be born in Arkansas. And I'm even further blessed to be raised in South Arkansas. I was born in Meany, just over on the line over here, in 1951. And a lot of things have happened since then. But most of the things I've seen have been jobs that have been taken away. Because competition demands that we do it the best way. You know how it is in business. You've got to make that bottom line work out where it's lacking. We don't operate in the red end. We do. We don't stay there very long. And so we've seen those jobs go away. A lot of the manual labor jobs that we grew up with, you know, I remember a logging crew with a chainsaw and a tractor and skidder and a billet truck. And they worked every day, and they made a living. But now it's poles, it's long poles, it's heavy equipment, $1 million. It takes at least $1 million to set up a logging operation. Those manual jobs have gone away. So what are we going to do? We're going to all move to Mexico? I'm not. I want to stay here. I want to create jobs that people can do. So machine operators at these mines are paid $17 to $25 per hour for straight time. That equipment never shuts off. They just change the operator, keep it moving 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Because they enter into a contract with you and Bruce Malik or whoever else is selling their mineral, and they say, we'll get your mineral out at X dollars per acre, and we'll do it in a 5-year period of time, and we'll replant it in grass or timber, whichever you wish, and give you a proven stand before we walk away. So how much is it worth per acre? I've heard figures somewhere between $1,500 per acre to $2,000 an acre for the mineral. That is if you own the full mineral right. If you don't own it all, you get your percentage or whatever. And if you don't own any of it, they'll still can come get it if you agree and concur, and your house or whatever the property that's been damaged will be replaced or replenished to your approval. So, who are they going to come looking for? The large timber holders would be the first choice. The Plum Creeks, the Anthony Timberlands, and folks of large holdings would be the first one. How are you going to get that out of there? Well, we're already clear-cutting timber. So it's not a new technique. Now, in Grandpa's day it was. He said, boy, that's going to ruin the environment. We select cut. We don't cut everything. But Grandpa's in his grave, and we've been clear cutting for years, and we get more productivity per acre because of that. So the large timber companies are in line with this. They own the mineral, and they'll be the ones that will have the mineral that extracts. But when it's being extracted, there'll be truck drivers, there'll be machine operators, there'll be people on site that are geologists, that are engineers, that will be drawing 6-digit salaries, in addition to those folks out there operating that Caterpillar at $30 an hour. But there's all kinds of ability there on the site, and it's right here. We don't have to ask someone from India or China or some other country to come to America to create jobs. We've got them right here. Now, you know, I'm kind of a redneck, and I can't apologize for that because that's the way I am. I don't like to be dependent on someone else for my future. I don't really care that some guy in some foreign country can shut the valve off and say, you guys are going to suffer for oil. I'm not letting you have any of my product. I want to be independent. And so in this process, we can create 80 billion barrels of oil to last us, or the equivalency of that. If it was just $80 a barrel, it's a lot of money, folks. And that's right here available. So what are we doing with these meetings? You might ask. And what in the world is this crazy guy standing up in front of me talking about this about? I wanted, and the rest of our team, and I'm not the only one, but our team wanted to get the general public involved in alternate energies and do it in a clean way. Because you see, in this refining process, we can capture the carbon, the mercury, the vanadium, the sulfur. All these are saleable items that can be used in fertilization and other techniques in our industry. Chemicals that it produces would help in plywood construction, There's a lot of things, if you looked at the white papers, and I'm giving you a quick and hurried overview of this, but these things are sellable, and they're enabling us to have a cleaner environment, because you see, the diesel fuel that we're running right now in our trucks emits carbon, and we're having to scrub that out. When we refine lignite, we take the carbon out, we sequester that, we can put it under pressure, pump it into the depleted oil fields of South Arkansas, and that old thick crude right now that won't flow can be reduced in viscosity and cause it to flow again. We have an example in the pictures that we showed the other night down here of a Canadian depleted oil field that was not producing, and they sequester the carbon from the North Dakota gasification site, and they're producing 20,000 barrels a year now instead of nothing. That's pretty important too. So that allows the remaining residual oil in our so-called depleted oil fields in South Arkansas to flow and to get more of that. And it won't contaminate the soil and contaminate our water system. So how are we going to do this environmentally sound? Well, Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, ADEQ, better known as, is the overseer of how we do this environmentally. And so they'll be on site. The Arkansas Geological Survey that Bruce mentioned a while ago will be there to help set up the geological extraction and how it would happen on each site. We've got the oversight. We've got the environmental ability to do it correctly without damaging the environment and its job creation. That's the story we're trying to get at. How can you help in this prospect? Because, you know, I just referred to the fact that it's a large thing to do, and we can't do it individually. You can get online, get on your fax machine, get on your telephone, preferably something in writing, and send a copy to your leaders, to your legislators. Ask them to begin to think more outside the bun or outside the box. Let's look for something. Let's look for ways to do this. I believe our federal delegation that represent Arkansas in both the House and the Senate would be interested for seeing something like this create jobs. Because you see, they like to get reelected too, right, Dee? And they want to know that the people back home approve of their effort for us. What's $3 million compared to $640 billion? I'd like to take odds on that. I'd like to invest in something like that, would you not? So you can help us by contacting your senators and your representatives and telling them to really look for ways to find that $3 million. Can we do it for less than that? I don't think so. The $3 million is going to have to be sending these core samples to an off-site lab to tell us the value of that mineral. And that lets the industry that's sitting at the border, waiting for us to do something, all right, Arkansas, your mineral is worth coming after, and we see that you guys are really serious about this. We're ready to come make investments. North American Coal and other companies are sitting there waiting for us to do something. How long will they wait? I don't know. But I've been told if we don't make some progress pretty shortly, they're going to go to other states and help them create their lignite resource, and Arkansas will be left in the background again. But you know, I'm an Arkansan, and I don't like being last. I like being first. You know, when I was a student here, I had classes under Mr. Orville Childs, and he said, boy, I want to tell you something. Don't ever be the first to do anything, but don't ever be the last either. You need to be somewhere in the middle. We got Texas over here that's been extracting their lignite since the 80s. We were at the Hallsville site, and we looked at what has happened there in their electrical generation. They started digging at the mine site. They're 5 miles away since 1985. They do 500 acres a year, and they're making electrical energy with it. A lot of good jobs. East Texas, I've heard it said, looks better now after they reclaimed the land than it did before. I got kinfolks in Texas, so I can say that. But, you know, that's Texas. Louisiana is creating energy with their resources. They're using it for electrical generation as well. They're looking at the lignite to liquid as well. UT Arlington is working with this issue, and they're doing it the smart way. They're putting this out for bids right now, and they've got 3 competitors that are bidding on this technique, and they plan to have their first mini refinery ready before end of this year at about a $5 to $7 million per each. Each one of these little mini refineries, by the way, can produce 1,000 barrels per day out of the lignite research at resources there. So if you put several of them in line or in conjunction one with another, you can get a large production from that site. And again, the Mississippi people, they're developing their lignite. North Dakota is doing theirs. They've been doing it. We can do it in Arkansas, but we've got to look at what do I, as an Arkansan, what can I do to make this happen? You're just as important as Mark Trimer, as Mike Ross, as Garry Smith, as Bruce Mallett, because you have a vote and you have a voice. And if you don't say something about it, I can't do it all by myself. And I need your help. We all need your help. But we need to create those jobs that will keep Arkansas's youth at home. And then our numbers won't be diminishing. Bruce kind of referred to it, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but what I've heard is the census is going to reflect we may lose 2 state Senate seats to Northwest Arkansas. Folks, that's power. That's votes. That's a lack of votes. Who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for their constituents first. I hate to tell you, they love me, but they don't love me that much. They'll vote for their people first, and I might get them to co-sign on something else, but it's a give-and-take situation in the legislature, and that's how politics work. If we keep losing numbers, we're going to be a forgotten folk. There's some people that think we don't even exist now. Anything south of Interstate 30, they tend to think we belong to someone else. I disagree with them. So we've got to have our voice heard, folks, and this is the way to do it. I appreciate the Magnolia Economic Development Council. I very much appreciate Southern Arkansas University and the leadership of Dr. Rankin and staff here. They've been relentless in this, and they continue pushing it. We're going to have a luncheon January the 20th at Little Rock, inviting legislators and members of the general public. If you'll alert Miss Debbie back here and let her know you're coming, we'll feed you Woods Place catfish. You can't beat that if you're eating fish. And we're going to tell you more about lignite. We're going to try to entertain and include others in our effort to develop this lignite resource. But we need some investments. Well, and we spoke of this last night in Arkadelphia. Miss Cammie and I and David and Robbie were speaking. What can we do? I think what we could do is get Ouachita Partners in Economic Development, the Golden Triangle, maybe the Magnolia Economic Development Council, maybe some other cities that have known deposits to upfront a little bit of money, and let's capture some of my colleagues and take them to Hallville, Texas, and let them see what's going on down there at mine site. Because you see, that reclamation is something that I can really appreciate. I saw one location where they had extracted the mineral, and there was an operable gas well there when they began excavation. They closed the well down, never burst any pipes, lost nothing, brought it back into operation after the lignite was removed, and beautiful pastures, beautiful timberland, whatever the landowner wanted. I see it as an opportunity for the landowner to get 2 returns on his investment. He first cuts his timber and takes that off. He gets paid for his mineral reserve and gets that money in his pocket and then gets it planted back. That's 2 returns in a lifetime that most of us will never see if you own timberland. If you get 1 cutting per year, unless you live to be 150 years old, at today's rate, you're going to see a long time before you get that kind of return. This is a great opportunity, and then the jobs are on top of that. Any questions from anyone? I may have gone too long, Ms. Cammie. Yes, sir.
How many counties does this cover?
It covers, if you can draw a line from Texarkana over to the Mississippi River, it covers about 1/3 of the state. I think in your white paper, is it not? I think someone just was showing it. It goes all the way up to Blue Hill, Missouri. But the known recoverable amounts that we know can be taken out economically feasible are in the southern 1/3, almost over to Pine Bluff and southward of there. There's some deep coal over in southeast Arkansas that has methane and natural gas capabilities, which is something that we need to look at as well. But the mineable stuff, that's from surface level down to about 150 to 180 foot depth, is mostly in our area.
Well, according to my quick calculations, if it covers 10 counties, that's about $15 per person
Yes, sir.
in that area.
That's right.
Is there any chance of local people raising it?
There would be no problem with that happening, because if we, in the legislature, we can write an appropriation, but getting funding for it is sometimes the effort. So if we set up the revenue stream for that money to flow through an appropriation, yes, sir, local contributions would be great benefit to this program. And economic development councils and any folks that are forward thinking. You see, we've got to quit thinking about the old way. We got to look at new ways. We can make diesel out of woody mince, and we can make it out of algae and catfish ponds. There's a lot of things we can do that haven't been done before, but at the price of oil, and according to the University of Arkansas economist that spoke to our committee a few weeks back, he said you're not going to see it in the $40 range ever again. Crude oil is never going to get down below 80, and we expect it to hit the $100 per barrel range pretty soon, and probably sustain it above $100 per barrel. And so, you see, the known pumpable oil that we have in the world is on a limited basis, but the demand since the India and China automobiles and vehicles out on the street. And so our demand for oil is pretty much leveled out in America. But the rest of the world is causing that price to stay spiked up. And that's why this lignite resource will give us some energy independence as well as creation of jobs. And it's a clean source as well. So, we're not going to get electric cars and electric trucks to haul our freight and take our people up and down the highways within the next 30 to 40 years, I don't think. It'll happen, but it'll take a long time. In the interim, we're still dependent on fossil fuels, and this is a fossil fuel that's readily available, and it's easier to crack it with pressure and temperature than number 2 coal or something else. But it is a fossil fuel. And God put it here for us to use anyway, and we're smarter than we were years ago, and we can do it environmentally safe and economically feasible to do that. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you for listening to me. I hope I didn't rattle too long, Ms. Cammie, but thank you for having me, and let's continue this effort. If you are interested, talk to me or get in touch with us. The email for legislators would be our first name dot last name arkansaslegislature.com. That's the new email address for all the members. Since I was from the last session, mine was, I have 2 email addresses up on the state level, but that would be the best way to reach us, and give us a written comment on that. And thank you again for listening to me, and God bless you. Thank you very much.